It's one hell of a time being Spider-Man right now. 10 years after his trip down the post-apocalyptic rabbit hole, Peter Parker is enjoying a rather pleasant domestic home life. He's settled into his role as Equestria's knight, has a daughter who's in the totally not a phase, and finally joined the MCU before Sony could kill him for good. Unfortunately, he picked up a bad case of PTSD, and is feeling a little bit off his game. Not only that, Discord and his team of misfits start to put their plan into motion, with the goal of sending Equestria into complete chaos. Outnumbered and taken by surprise, Peter and his friends must find a way to save the day. Will they succeed? Will we get another gratuitous Deadpool cameo? Find out in Spiders Magic 4, Fall of Spider-Man. Ugh. Oh my gosh. Seriously, again with this whole Spider-Man thing? It was never funny, 32. What makes you think it's supposed to be funny? Then why do you keep bringing it up? Because it doesn't make sense. I mean, isn't mane the pony way of saying hair? So doesn't that mean in their own lingo, they're calling him spider hair? In what universe does that make sense? Am I the only one who's bothered by this? Anyone? Who cares? The only thing you people care about is whether or not I think Spiders of Magic 4 is good. And I guess that's the million-dollar question. Is this story good? Well, after spending the last year taking notes and experiencing many sleepless nights, staring at my ceiling and debating the pros and cons of a Spider-Man My Little Pony fanfiction, I have come to a conclusion. Spiders in Magic 4 is okay. Truth be told, I have a lot of mixed feelings about this story. On one hand, I feel like Max and Azu have really stepped up their game for this one. While the previous installments were good in their own rights, I feel like this was their attempt to really add more layers to the characters and the world that they created, or at least borrowed from and then mended together using duct tape. On the other hand, I feel like it stretched itself a little thin. This is by far the busiest of the series, with a ton of characters, plot lines, cameos, action sequences. You get the picture. Some of them are executed well, some are not. I think the best way to see what works and what doesn't is to go through this story step by step. So sit back, cook up some popcorn, and put on your favorite Spider-Man pajamas, cause this is gonna be a long review. S&M 4 can be split up into 3 parts. Out of all of them, part 1 is my favorite. After the mind freak that was S&M 3, Peter is feeling the after effects in terms of some good old-fashioned PTSD. He's got nightmares, his spider sense is on the fritz, and has a severe case of the Mondays. Meanwhile, his daughter Mayday, like every child in the MLP universe, is having an identity crisis. Oh, I don't like my cutie mark. What does it even mean? To be honest, I'm inclined to agree with her. I mean, what the hell is that supposed to mean anyway? I mean, how did she even get it? Anyway, one thing I love about this part is how it's structured. In order to wear Peter down, Discord throws villain after villain at him every single day, slowing him and his friends down to the point where they are almost completely helpless. Seeing Spider-Man, a character who is usually so resilient, getting beaten down is like watching a train wreck. It's hard to look at, but you can't turn away. I also like how this enforces the whole power responsibility thing that is so vital to the character. He could let his other friends handle it, but he keeps coming back, not wanting anyone else to get hurt. It's also a good way to slowly introduce our supporting characters and villains. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever in an S&M story, we actually have sympathetic villains. Remember those sirens from the second Equestria Girls movies that had those really catchy tunes? Well, these crazy people actually found a way to make them interesting. After being stuck in Barbie World for the last several years or so, the sirens have returned to find that their entire race has been wiped out. And after they find out that Celestia was at fault, the trio decides to fight all those who stand by her side. including the Spectacular Spider-Man, or at least a couple do. Wait, what's that? There's disagreement? Infighting? Should they align with the other villains? Who are the real villains? Should they break up? Can they even afford to break up? They're all the family they've got left. Love, tension, heartbreak. Yes, this is what I call some good drama. And then there's Discord, who's above average. He's alright, I guess. I mean, I loved how despite teaming up with these other villains, he ultimately has his own agenda. Now, is Discord the kind of guy who even have an agenda? Probably not. But it still felt very fitting for the character. Then there's Mayday, who pretty much makes her premiere in this story, and I like her as well. She's an inquisitive, risk-taking technophile. Unfortunately, she's also gullible and prone to making irrational decisions, which is exactly why Discord chooses her to be his little tool of unrest. But before we dive into that crazy subplot, let's address some problems that Part 1 did have. For example, world building. To say that the S&M universe is a little crazy is an understatement. Since it's building off of Marvel and MLP lore, this world has a lot of potential, but I think that the authors could do a better job of actually explaining it. For example, this story is set a decade or so after the original installment, and they barely explain how the world and characters have evolved since then. We got a sense that Peter was a person of controversy at the end of the first story, but his reputation among the population never really comes into play. Also, what happens to these guys? What exactly do they do when they're not giving Peter a hand? As cool as some of these characters can be, a lot of details are missing or glossed over. A baffling example of this is when Twilight is having a picnic with all of her friends, and she goes something like, "Wow, all of my friends are still single and still here," for some reason. Really? You're telling me that after a decade, not one of her female friends is in a romantic relationship? As a 20-something with a Facebook account, I can say that that is the most unrealistic thing in this whole story. I'm not saying you have to go and ship them all or anything, but come on, at least be a little realistic. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but 32, they did fill in those gaps. Don't you remember that conversation between Sunset and Twilight? That was a lot of exposition. And it sure was. It's a good thing that I complained about this lack of exposition several weeks before it was written. And while I appreciate the gesture, this sort of information is better when it's sprinkled in naturally in the first act, rather than given in a huge exposition dump halfway through the second. Speaking of exposition and world building, let's just talk about the characters in general. There are a lot of them in the story. Like a ton. And whether it was intentional or not, this tale feels like an ensemble piece. So then that begs the question, what's the best way to approach an ensemble story? How much screen time should every character have? And is simply being on screen enough? Well, I don't know. I'm hardly an expert on screenwriting or writing in general, so let's ask someone who is, like the director of the epic, action-packed blockbuster You, Me, and Dupree, and the hilarious, heartwarming romantic comedy Captain America Civil War.
Approve Gadam on Facebook asks, how do you balance and give attention to each of the superheroes in Civil War?
From the beginning of our journey as filmmakers, Joe and I have always loved ensembles. Okay,
Yeah.
Like our first movie, Welcome to Collinwood, was an ensemble. A lot of our TV work, Arrested, Community, Happy Endings, all ensembles. We take passes where we think about the story from beginning to end. Even though it's Captain America's movie, you know, we will step through the story from every other character's point of view. Literally, so that you can follow the character from the moment they enter the story to the moment they exit the story. And we just think about the whole movie as theirs for a moment. There's going to be somebody in the movie theater that came to the movie just for that one character, no matter how much screen time they have. So you want to make sure that fan gets the best experience they could possibly have. See the character do some really cool things, do some surprising things, have an emotional arc that's very engaging and relatable. So the whole package. So we try to build, even for very small amounts of screen time, we try to build something satisfying and fun and figure out the coolest thing we can do with that character and how they can intersect with the bigger story.
Now, using these points for the sake of argument, let's take a look at the supporting cast. When I reviewed the last installment, I criticized the supporting cast for being a bit flat in terms of development and depth. And while the guys have really stepped up their game this time around, the majority of the side characters suffer from the same problem. For example, Sunset Shimmer, one of my favorite characters from the show and the saving grace of the Equestria Girls movies, is completely wasted here. She's given almost nothing to do. Her whole purpose is to be there and help fight or something. She has no badass scene. She's given no meaningful character development. She's just there. I mean, you could tell by the way she was introduced that she's just gonna be underwhelming as hell. Hey guys, it's me, Sunset. I know you haven't seen me in a while, and as much as I'd like to fill you in on all the juicy details like where I've been, what I've been doing, or, you know, why you should care, let's just skip all of that and get on with the action. When Slipknot has a more informative introduction, you know you messed up. And how about Black Cat? Did you know she was here? Because I completely forgot. It's the same thing. I cannot for the life of me remember one cool thing she did. And then there's Spider-Gwen. Now, since my knowledge of the character is very limited, I don't know if she was out of character or anything, but if I'm going to be perfectly honest here, I'm not really sure why she was even here. The story is that Peter is in the dumps for some reason, and this interdimensional spider lady is like, well, we can't have that attitude now, can we? So she pulls Spider-Gwen out of her universe and is like, hey guys, why don't you cheer each other up a bit? And what follows them? It's a nice little diversion with some of that classic slice of life stuff that we all like. After Twilight gets turned into poison ivy by these guys, Peter and Gwen save her, and after that it's like, that was fun. See you later. And that's it. The only thing it really adds to the overarching narrative is putting Twilight out of commission. And I guess Peter isn't as grumpy as before, but he still goes evil in the end, so a lot of good that did. But Spider-Gwen does show up again in part 2, but we'll get to that, right now. Throughout part 1, Discord and his pals slowly whittled down Peter and all of his allies, ending in a big fight that leaves all of the big hitters on Team Spidey to be down and out. With victory in their grasp, Tyrek uses his giant laser to blow up all the good guys, or at least tries to, before little Miss Eris is like, aw hell nah, and transports them all to the place where they would least expect. Earth. Ordinary, non-superhero, vanilla, white bread Earth. Given the ass-kicking they all just received, our heroes need some time to rest up. And thanks to some timey-wimey interdimensional technicalities, they have 3 months to spare before their home will be too far gone to save. Part 2 is obviously where the authors wanted to have a bit of fun. And after all, we just had this incredibly intense boss battle, why not take some time off? Do you hate fun or something? Now, before I go overboard on this section, I will say that there are definitely a lot of fun moments. Like that one time Peter and his friends went to a movie theater and went all Mystery Science Theater on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. It was one of those things I didn't know I wanted until I saw it. I mean, shoot, screw these other spin-offs, man. I want to see the gang rip a hole in all of the Spider-Man movies. This part also had some good character moments as well, as we finally see Luna's arc finally resolve. Wait, it's just occurred to me that I've never talked about Luna, despite her being a big player in the S&M series. So how do I describe her? She's basically Quasimodo, the Hunchback of Notre Dame. They both spent the better part of their lives in a high and secluded place, only to come down to Earth and receive mixed reactions. However, when the first pretty face of the opposite sex throws them a smile, they instantly fall head over heels in love. And just as they're about to make their move, ooh, sorry, some other pretty face got there first. They take it kind of hard, but despite the heartbreak, they risk life and limb to keep their friends safe. The difference is that Quasimodo quickly realized, well, I might be stuck in the friend zone, but at least I'm in a friend zone, so that's nice. Luna, on the other hand, never got to that point, leaving her in this weird character development limbo for like 2.5 stories. So, after yet another nasty incident revolving around symbiotes, Luna and Twilight have a heart-to-heart, and the Princess of the Night finally decides to let it go. Now, is this whole resolution a little abrupt? Sure. But it is satisfying to see her free of this creepy obsession. Not to mention, it could have ended a lot worse, in a scene that can only be described as half-baked, stupid, and retconned within a week. Trust me, in an alternate dimension, I'm going on some 20-minute indignant rant right now. Consider yourselves lucky. And while all that fun and downtime is great in its own right, I feel like its inclusion comes at a cost of the story's flow and momentum. In part 1, we had an intentional build-up. The situation slowly got worse and worse with every chapter, resulting in a very satisfying conclusion. In comparison, part 2 feels more like a compilation of scenes with hardly any build-up whatsoever. Aside from a few subplots that are resolved almost as quickly as they're introduced, there was just very little momentum carrying us into the third act. But the thing that irks me the most is that the whole part feels like a gigantic missed opportunity to explore the Celestial Conspiracy, aka the underlying reason why anything happens in this story at all. Let me explain. Thanks to Discord, Mayday learns that Princess Celestia is up to some Big Brother shenanigans. Once upon a time, some of the top minds in Equestria started making some incredible scientific breakthroughs, only to be shut down by Celestia herself. Her reason? Fear of the unknown, I guess. Maybe the invention of the microwave oven would collapse the fragile equestrian economy. Then Discord comes along, being like, no one mayor should have all that power. Believing that Celestia had too much control, he sought to restore the balance between chaos and order. To be honest, this whole conflict is actually quite interesting. On one side, Celestia is basically a benevolent dictator. And while most would agree that censorship is a big no-no, you can't argue with the results. Aside from the occasional coup attempt, things seem pretty peaceful. This is order at its most extreme. Compare this to our world, which could represent chaos at its most extreme. While there are some governments in place to keep us in line, the people in it have basically free reign to do whatever the heck they want. On one hand, we've got a lot of cool stuff, like cars, virtual reality, and Hot Pockets. On the other hand, we have stuff like, well, you know. And isn't it fitting that the character put slap dab in the middle of this conflict of two ideologies would be the daughter of two worlds? Oh, you clever clogs. And overall, I think this is a pretty cool conflict. The only problem is that it feels underdeveloped. We got some details in part 1, but part 2 basically puts this whole subplot on hold. Mayday barely does anything interesting, Discord causes a little more trouble, and Celestia, one of the key figures in this conflict, is completely absent. Seriously, why bother bringing along pointless characters like Patricia Parker and Sunset Shimmer along, but not Celestia? Doesn't make any sense. Considering that I was really interested in this plotline, I can't help but be disappointed. Especially when this was the best possible opportunity to explore it. Consider this. Mayday's on the fence about who she trusts. Her instincts say that Celestia is in the right, but Discord brings up some good points. Suddenly she's thrust into the world of men, the place where chaos reigns. She sees this world and is in complete awe of it. People are free to make and do whatever they want, and they don't have some weird butt mark controlling their destiny, and no powerful overlord telling them what to do. It's different, new, exciting, and she slowly starts to fall in love with it. Consider what would happen if Celestia came along, an all-powerful being who's suddenly been dethroned by her arch-nemesis, thrown into this weird world where chaos is everywhere? Unlike Mayday, she sees nothing but hate, violence, pollution, and complete disorder. This is what she spent her entire life trying to avoid, and seeing it up close only solidifies her opinion. This creates an interesting parallel between the characters, and allows the reader to see both sides of the argument without lengthy exposition. Not only would this make for an interesting conflict, but it would bring a lot more depth to these characters as well. As the story continues, Mayday slowly starts to turn away from her family, as they have put their trust in their glorious dictator. As a result, Peter starts to lose his way, and slowly turns to the dark side, which was Discord's plan in the first place. Cause and effect. Instead, all we get for this entire section is Discord talking to Mayday for 2 minutes and successfully convincing her to join the team. That's it. With the alternate route, you get the same outcome, but you understand both sides of the argument and sympathize with all the parties involved. And this, ladies and gentlemen, takes us to Part 3. This is where it all ends. Months of preparation have led these heroes to this very moment. Will all of their Rocky-inspired training montages be enough to give them the edge they need? As it turns out, yeah. So right out of the gate, Peter and pals come out swinging, and in more ways than one. They take out the Sinister Six with ease, and Sonata finally confronts her old friend in an emotional 1v1 brawl. For a final battle, everything's going swell, and then Mayday happens.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
You see, 5 minutes before the battle, Mayday got into an argument with her folks about Celestia and, their naivete and all that kind of jazz. And as a result, she just kind of pieces out. Well, in order to drive her point home, she drives a knife into her daddy's back. Literally.
So basically, what I was thinking of was, I can't believe you've done this.
Granted, she didn't want to kill him. She just wanted to inflict enough pain on him so that he would stop and listen to reason. Or something. Alright, I guess it's up to me to provide some in-depth analysis of why this was actually brilliant. Yeah, I got nothing. This was stupid. The reason why this doesn't work is that it comes out of nowhere. I mean, just a few chapters prior, she was Daddy's #1 girl, and now, one argument later, and she's Caesar's #1 Brutus. No build-up, barely any foreshadowing, and I don't really understand her motivations, and why, in such a short time period, she would just sway her allegiance like this. And since I don't understand her motives, it's hard for me to sympathize with her, which is why many people called her a brat, and an idiot, and stupid. If we had an arc like I just described, this outcome would have made more sense. Ugh. Oh, look at me, being so negative. Anyway, how long have we been going? What? Shoot, let's wrap this up. Anyway, intentional or not, Mayday's betrayal is the last straw that broke the camel's back as Peter gives into the dark side, and it's revealed that the source of all of his problems was actually Nightmare, the same demon that inflicted Luna, which turned her into Nightmare Moon. Actually, it's not the same one. You see, back in Spiders and Magic 3, Peter came across this old ruin, and it had, Luna's last, remaining life force, I guess. And so, he talked to her, it was really emotional and stuff. But, when she died, the remaining nightmare in her went into Peter instead. Which is why he slept with Sweetie Belle, which makes my defense of that scene completely moot. The point is, Peter's possessed by the devil and turns Super Saiyan. There might be a word for that, but I don't watch Naruto. So he goes crazy, but Celestia has the antidote that was introduced so long ago that it might as well be a Deus Ex Machina. And she injects Peter with it at the cost of her own life. Yes, Celestia dies, which would have been emotional for me if she hadn't been completely absent for half the story, and we actually got more insight into her character. But whatever. So it all ends with good Peter duking it out with Nightmare, and he wins through the power of friendship or something. And Discord goes to jail in Dimension X, Twilight becomes supreme ruler, and 14 years later, Peter becomes Nick Fury and assembles the Avengers. And also, he has a friendly lady demon inside of his head. Don't ask me why. I don't care. The end. Oh yeah, part 3 was alright, I guess. Had some stupid stuff in it, but overall, I guess it was alright. Oh, and that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the story as a whole. The biggest problem that the story had was its ambition. It strove to be the big and epic finale that people wanted, but at the cost of spreading itself too thin. Potentially interesting subplots and characters feel undercooked, while the slew of cameos and fluff chapters take up too much screen time. And while I may dislike some of the execution, this story makes me optimistic. It's clear to me that Max and Azu have both grown as writers, Their characters have more depth, the storylines are more complex, and they've proven time and time again that they're willing to take risks. And whatever they do next, I'm sure it'll be great. But that doesn't matter because I am done. Finally free to do something else, anything else. And boy, does it feel good. But for everyone else out there, just remember, Spiders and Magic is not just a story. It's a piece of us. You know, it's more than just a bunch of words. It's a thing. It's a beautiful thing. And as long as we keep it in our hearts, well, it'll never end.
Hey guys, did you hear? They're making a whole new series about their Equestrian Avengers. It's basically a continuation of the story. And since the main character is immortal, these stories could just go on forever. Isn't that awesome? Just think of all the reviews you could make.